A wise person understands one simple truth. Power does not lie in the noise, but in the silence. The strongest forces in this universe move quietly. The wind that shapes the mountain doesn't scream. The ocean that carves the land doesn't boast. And the wisest among us do not announce their strength. They guard it, conceal it, protect it from corruption, distraction, and misuse. There are three things a wise person always keeps to themselves, not because they are ashamed, not because they are afraid, but because they know the value of secrecy in a world addicted to exposure. These are the seeds of their greatness, the roots of their endurance, and the soul of their purpose. The first thing a wise person hides is their plans. Let that sink in, not because the plans are weak or unworthy, but because not everyone deserves access to your blueprint. You see, when a man shares his dreams with those who cannot see them, he invites doubt, he invites jealousy, he invites spiritual attack from people who don't have the vision or the discipline to walk that same path. And so the wise man walks in silence. He works in darkness. He plants in private, waters in solitude, and harvests only when the fruit is undeniable. This world is full of people who will try to talk you out of your dream, not because it's impossible, but because they could never imagine doing it themselves. They will try to distract you, delay you, discourage you, not out of malice always, but out of limitation. So the wise man builds in silence. The wise woman creates in the shadows. They understand the power of momentum that is protected, preserved, and untainted by premature exposure. Why? Because energy leaks through words. When you talk too much about what you're about to do, you drain the energy you need to actually do it. You become intoxicated with the illusion of progress, when in reality, you haven't taken a single meaningful step. The wise understand that greatness doesn't need to announce itself. It proves itself. And until that proof is undeniable, they protect their plans like a flame in the wind. The second thing a wise person hides is their weaknesses. Not out of fear, not out of pride, but out of awareness. They know that in the wrong hands your weakness becomes a weapon. In the hands of the wrong friend, your vulnerability becomes ammunition. And so the wise person doesn't pretend to be invincible, but they are strategic with whom they trust. To be clear, hiding your weaknesses is not the same as denying them. The wise are brutally honest with themselves. They spend time in self-examination. They do the hard work of personal development. They know where they fall short, and they work to grow. But they don't broadcast those flaws to the world. They don't invite unnecessary criticism. They don't give their enemies a map to their blind spots. Instead, they strengthen their weaknesses in private. They turn scars into strength in silence. They bleed behind closed doors so they can walk into battle without fear. Think about the eagle. It doesn't fly around announcing that it's molting, that it's shedding, that it's vulnerable. No, it retreats to the high places, away from the noise, away from danger, and it renews itself, quietly, painfully, alone, and when it returns stronger, faster, sharper. That is the way of the wise. You cannot grow in public what is still too fragile to survive scrutiny. You must protect your process. You must nurture your becoming in spaces where you are safe. And then, when the time is right, you emerge, not as someone needing validation, but as someone whose presence speaks louder than explanation. Now the third thing a wise person hides is their income, their wealth, their resources. Why? Because nothing attracts false friends, greedy minds, and jealous hearts more than the scent of money. The wise person understands that revealing what you have invites people who want a piece of it. And many of those people don't come to add value, they come to take. Money reveals character, not just your own, but the character of those around you. When people believe you have wealth, they change. They begin to flatter, they begin to manipulate, some will try to guilt you, others will try to use you, some will plot, and so the wise person keeps their prosperity private, not because they're selfish, but because they're smart. Not because they don't give, but because they choose who to give to wisely. There is a difference between generosity and foolishness. A wise person will give, but only when it aligns with principle. A wise person will share, but not when it compromises their peace. And above all, a wise person knows that money, like fire, must be contained, controlled, and respected, or it will destroy everything in its path. Silence becomes the shield of the wise. Privacy becomes their fortress. They understand that exposure invites interference. They know that the more you reveal, the more you are judged. The more you open your doors, the more you risk letting in what does not belong, and so they move strategically. Their life is not a reality show, it's a mission. Their actions are not for attention, they are for impact. They do not explain their steps to those who will never understand the destination. They do not justify their ambition to those who have surrendered their own. They do not defend their focus to those addicted to distraction. We live in a time where everyone is obsessed with sharing their thoughts, their moves, their wins, their struggles. But the wise resist the urge to overexpose, because they know that once something sacred is made public, it is no longer sacred. Once something private is displayed for approval, it becomes tainted by opinion. Do you want to protect your peace? Do you want to maintain your power? Then do what the wise have always done. Hide your plans until they are complete. Hide your weaknesses until they are strengthened. Hide your wealth until it can be used for purpose. And in that silence you will find clarity. In that privacy you will build power. In that discretion you will rise above the noise, and become the force you were always meant to be. Because the truth is, the wise know that the most dangerous man is not the one who shouts. It's the one who listens. The most powerful woman is not the one who seeks attention. It's the one who moves with intention. And the most unstoppable soul is the one who has mastered the art of restraint. Your journey is sacred, your power is precious, and your time is too short to waste it explaining yourself to those who will never understand the fire that burns within you. Protect your plans, guard your growth. Shield your success, move with quiet confidence, speak only when it serves, act only when it's right, and never ever forget, silence is not weakness, it is strategy, it is strength, it is wisdom. Because the ones who shout their intentions from the rooftops often do so to convince themselves, not others. The wise have nothing to prove. They are too busy building, too committed to their mission, too focused on their path to pause and seek applause. They know that clapping hands cannot lay bricks, and loud opinions do not pay dividends. Their success does not need to be shouted. It needs only to be sustained, and so they develop the discipline of stillness. They train themselves to be calm in the storm, silent in chaos, invisible when necessary. They understand the psychological advantage of unpredictability. When people don't know your next move, they can't block it. When they don't know what you value, they can't manipulate it. When they don't know where your strength lies, they fear all of you. That is the power of silence. The ones who survive the longest in any game, whether it be business, war, relationships, or leadership, are not the loudest. They are the ones who move like water, adaptive, quiet, and unstoppable. They don't speak of their next step, they take it. They don't explain their strategy, they execute it. They don't react to noise, they stay rooted in purpose. And make no mistake, the wise are not weak. They are warriors of restraint. They are fighters who have mastered themselves. They have trained their emotions like soldiers and sharpened their minds like swords. They have developed an inner sanctuary where clarity reigns and chaos cannot enter. That is why they don't share everything. They don't want to contaminate the sacred with the casual. See, when you tell the wrong person your plan, you give them the power to distort it. Not always intentionally, but through their fears, their doubts, their low standards, their lack of faith. They may not even mean harm, but their mindset is a virus to your vision. That's why a wise person doesn't consult everyone. They consult the qualified. They don't ask for validation. They ask for insight, and even then, only from those who have built what they wish to build. They guard their circle like they guard their secrets. because they understand that the energy of those around you either lifts you or limits you. So they surround themselves with the loyal, the disciplined, the clear-minded. They would rather walk alone than compromise their direction for the company of confusion. They don't fear solitude, they use it. They don't fear silence, they trust it. And let us talk about strength for a moment. True strength is never loud. It does not need recognition. It does not demand acknowledgement. It simply is. The strongest trees do not shake with every wind. The tallest mountains do not lower themselves to be seen. They remain steady, enduring, unapologetically grounded. That is the posture of the wise. They aren't quick to post their every victory, because they understand that even victory must be digested, celebrated in the soul before it's paraded before the world. Every win is a lesson. Every milestone is preparation for the next test. The wise don't confuse a moment of glory with a life of purpose. They don't stop to gloat. They keep moving, quietly, effectively, and while others are busy trying to be seen, the wise are busy becoming sharper, becoming wiser, becoming more aligned with their mission. They don't chase fame, they chase fulfillment. They don't seek applause, they seek results. Their goal is not to impress, it is to impact. And impact, my friend, does not always come with likes, with shares, with fanfare. Sometimes it comes in the silence after the storm, in the legacy that outlives the noise. But remember, the reason the wise hide their wealth is not only to protect it from others, but also to protect their own hearts from being corrupted by it. Money is a tool, not a trophy. It is a servant, not a master. And the wise know that if they ever begin to find their identity in what they possess, they have already lost something far more valuable. That is why they do not flaunt it. They do not wave it around to earn respect. Their worth was established before their bank account was. Their dignity is not up for sale. They understand that real wealth is measured not only in numbers, but in peace, in freedom, in time, in the ability to choose, to create, to give without restraint. So they build quietly, they multiply silently, and they bless strategically. This mindset is not common. That's why true wisdom is rare. Most people want to be known. The wise want to be effective. Most want to be heard. The wise want to be remembered, not for their noise, but for their contribution, not for their visibility, but for their impact. And impact does not come from overexposure. It comes from inner mastery. The man who speaks constantly is often afraid of silence, afraid of what he might hear when things go quiet. But the wise have faced that silence. They've sat with themselves. They've listened. They've confronted the noise within. And through that process they've emerged with vision that doesn't need validation to proceed. That's why they keep their steps guarded, because their path is sacred, their time is costly, their focus is fierce. And their calling is too great to be diluted by premature celebration or careless opinion. So when others wonder why they are so quiet, so private, so disciplined, the answer is simple: because they are building something that cannot afford to be broken. Because they are carrying something that cannot be dropped. Because they are preparing for a battle that cannot be won through talk alone. They know that every word they speak must be intentional. Every move they make must be calculated, and every truth they reveal must be for a purpose, not for popularity, not for sympathy, not for ego. This is the mindset of those who rise above the rest, not with arrogance, but with assurance, not with noise, but with knowing. They are not moved by trends, they are not shaken by opinions, they are not distracted by attention. They have found their center, and from that center they operate with a clarity that no applause or attack can disturb. Because the path they walk is not for everyone. It's narrow, it's steep, it demands sacrifice, not selfies. It demands action, not affirmation. And so they do not waste breath trying to justify their pace or explain their silence. They let the results speak. They let their fruit testify. They let time reveal what words never could. You see, there's something sacred about keeping your inner world hidden, something divine about protecting your essence from the contamination of constant exposure. The moment you put everything on display, you forfeit the power of mystery, and mystery, when used rightly, becomes magnetism. People are drawn to what they can't easily access. They lean in to understand what you don't explain. They pay closer attention to what you don't shout. The wise understand this dynamic and they don't abuse it. They master it. They cultivate an atmosphere around them that commands respect, not by force, but by intentional restraint. They build trust not by telling all, but by telling just enough to invite depth, not drama, because they are not trying to impress. They are trying to transform, and transformation is a quiet revolution. They know that just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be told. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you need to say it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's the level of self-control the wise practice daily. The power to hold back even when it burns to speak. The power to wait even when the world says rush. The power to know and not need to prove that you know, and that's why they are underestimated, until they are unstoppable. The silent worker, the quiet learner, the one who isn't flashy but shows up consistently, the one who isn't seen until it's too late for the world to ignore them. Because when the moment finally arrives, and they unveil what they've been building, growing, and mastering in silence, it lands with the weight of inevitability. It's not hype, it's not luck, it's not surprise. It's the result of a foundation that was laid in obscurity. They are not surprised by their success. They expected it. They prepared for it, not because they were arrogant, but because they were faithful. Faithful in the dark, faithful in the lonely nights, faithful when no one was clapping. And that kind of preparation, my friend, doesn't require announcements. It demands discipline. While others were busy marketing a version of themselves they hadn't yet become, the wise were becoming the person their goals required. Becoming the thinker their vision demanded, becoming the steward their resources needed, becoming the voice their generation had been waiting for, quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And if you ever encounter someone who walks with that quiet confidence, who doesn't speak often but when they do it hits deep, pay attention. That is not accident, that is evidence, evidence of hours invested, of decisions made in silence, of a life that's been honed like a blade in the dark, waiting for its moment to cut through the noise. They understand that influence is not something you chase, it's something you grow into. And real power is not loud, it is deliberate, it is disciplined, it is discreet. They also know that privacy protects purity, because the moment too many eyes are watching, the temptation to perform becomes deadly. The moment you live for their reaction, you lose your own direction. So they stay hidden, not because they fear the light, but because they are cultivating something that must be ready for the light. Just like seeds under the soil, they don't rush the reveal. They wait, they absorb, they strengthen, and when they finally rise, they are rooted deep. You won't see them coming, but you'll feel the shift when they arrive, and that is why their silence is never empty. It is never passive. It is intentional space, filled with strategy, with self-reflection, with skill sharpening. And while others think nothing is happening, everything is happening, just not where the world is looking. They learn in the background so they can lead in the foreground. They fail in private so they can succeed in public. They rehearse in secret so that when the spotlight comes, they don't flinch. They perform. And even then, even when success finds them, they do not change their posture. They stay grounded. They stay guarded. They stay wise, because they've seen what happens when people get drunk on their own exposure. They've seen brilliance destroyed by ego. They've watched authenticity traded for applause, and they refuse to let that happen to them, so they keep hiding what must be hidden. They keep covering what must remain sacred, because they know that the moment you hand over your power for attention, you've lost both. Because they've realized that in a world obsessed with visibility, the most valuable things are still hidden. Diamonds are found deep in the earth. Pearls rest at the bottom of the ocean, gold is buried beneath layers of soil, and so, too, is greatness cultivated in the hidden places, formed under pressure, shaped in silence. The wise understand that not everyone deserves access to the raw version of who they are becoming, because when something is in progress, it's also in danger of being judged too soon, mishandled too often, misunderstood too deeply. So they protect the version of themselves that is not yet finished. They give it time to strengthen, time to become unshakable, time to walk into the light fully formed, not half baked. They know that attention can be a trap, that fame can become a prison, that sometimes being seen too soon is the very thing that breaks what could have become powerful. So they walk slowly, they reveal selectively, they move with care. They are not hiding out of fear. They are preparing out of wisdom. They don't speak on everything because not every topic deserves their energy. They don't react to everything because not every battle is worth the blood. They don't correct every false narrative because truth has a way of surviving slander. The wise are not concerned with proving themselves. They are concerned with mastering themselves, and that is a higher pursuit. It takes strength to be silent in a loud world. It takes courage to stay private when everyone else is shouting for recognition. It takes deep conviction to protect what you're building when the world demands exposure. But that's exactly why the wise rise, because they are not moved by the demand. They are guided by their discipline. They wake up before the world does. They grind when no one is clapping. They learn when others are scrolling. They refine when others are performing. And when the moment finally comes to speak, to act, to lead, it's not noise, it's weight. It's not hype, it's substance. It's not show, it's legacy. And all along, while others were busy looking outside for validation, the wise were looking within, digging deeper, asking harder questions, facing the uncomfortable truths that most run from, because they know that inner mastery precedes outer success, that the size of the stage means nothing if the character behind it is weak, that impact flows not from performance, but from authenticity. That's why they protect what's sacred. That's why they don't share everything they know, everything they feel, or everything they have. Because wisdom is not just knowing what to say, it's knowing when to say it. And more importantly, when not to. The greatest leverage they hold is not their talent, not their resources, not even their connections. It's their ability to move undetected, to make strategic decisions under the radar, to observe without being observed, to learn without announcing their presence. They understand that when you are underestimated, you are free, free to operate without resistance, free to pivot without scrutiny, free to grow without pressure, and so they welcome the shadows, not as places of weakness, but of preparation. The shadows are not where they shrink, it's where they sharpen, it's where they gain clarity. It's where they become dangerous, not in a way that harms, but in a way that cannot be stopped. Because by the time the world finally notices them, it's already too late to stop what's coming. The momentum is built. The foundation is laid, the vision is set in motion, and now, what once needed to be protected in silence can speak for itself, through results, through fruit, through undeniable excellence. And even then, even after the results are visible and the world takes notice, the wise don't get caught in the wave. They stay anchored. They remain students of silence. They return again and again to the hidden place, not because they are hiding, but because that's where real power is renewed. That's where ego is checked. That's where vision is recalibrated. That's where they remind themselves of why they started and what truly matters. Because the sacred is fragile, not weak, but delicate in its demand for reverence. The moment you begin to treat it casually, it loses its power. The moment you expose it to those who haven't earned access, it becomes common, and what is common is rarely respected. That's why the wise are careful, not paranoid, not secretive for the sake of mystery, but intentional about what they share, when they share, and with whom. They don't let everyone into their inner world. Because not everyone can handle the weight of truth, the depth of their thoughts, or the intensity of their purpose. The wise understand that proximity doesn't equal permission. Just because someone is near doesn't mean they're qualified to know your vision. Just because they ask doesn't mean they deserve the answer. Silence becomes their shield, and discernment their gatekeeper. They know that elevation without preparation leads to exposure without protection. So they hide not out of shame, but out of strategy. They hide their ideas until they're refined. They hide their emotions until they're understood. They hide their moves until they're made. Because once the curtain rises, there is no pulling it back down. This world doesn't nurture patience. It demands content, demands updates, demands that you reveal something, anything, to stay relevant. But the wise don't serve that God. They serve purpose. They answer only to the call within. And that call does not rush. That call demands silence. That call grows in obscurity until it becomes undeniable. And that's why when the wise finally do speak, it carries weight. It's not reaction. It's revelation. It's not noise. It's necessity, because they have trained their tongue to serve the truth, not their ego. And so when they release words into the world, they don't return empty. They cut through confusion. They stir action, they ignite purpose. Their silence isn't a void, it's a vault. It holds power, it stores intention, it protects legacy, and there's another thing the wise understand. People don't always want truth. They want comfort. They want agreement. They want to hear what soothes their ego, not what stirs their soul. That's why the wise choose their moments carefully, because when truth is delivered before its time, it falls on deaf ears. It becomes wasted fire, and fire is too valuable to waste, so they wait, they study the terrain, they read the room, they discern the hearts, and only when the moment is right, only when the foundation is strong enough to handle the weight of what they carry, only then do they speak. And when they do, it's not to be liked. It's to be heard, not to impress, but to awaken, because the wise are builders, builders of people, builders of systems, builders of vision, and builders don't waste materials. They don't pour their effort into unstable ground. They test the soil first. They measure twice. They prepare in silence so they don't have to repair in public. And all this, the discipline, the restraint, the focus, it doesn't make them cold. It makes them dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to mediocrity, dangerous to distraction, dangerous to the lies people tell themselves to stay small, because the wise, in their quiet strength, expose those lies simply by living the truth. Their life becomes a message, their discipline becomes a sermon, their progress becomes proof, not through shouting, but through presence, not through argument, but through example, and still, even in their rise, they do not forget the law of the hidden. They do not forsake the sacred for the spotlight, because they've seen how quickly the spotlight turns into a searchlight, exposing flaws, magnifying mistakes, distorting intention. So they keep some things just for themselves. Not because they are selfish, but because they are stewards, stewards of a vision too precious to be sacrificed on the altar of public opinion. So let the world shout. Let it clamor for attention, for validation, for applause. But you be wise, be still, be strategic, guard your thoughts, protect your emotions, and move in silence until the noise around you is forced to recognize the power within you. The world does not need more people who talk. It needs more people who think. It does not need more performers. It needs more builders. And builders don't waste their blueprints explaining what will only be understood when it stands finished. Hide what must be hidden, not out of fear, but out of foresight. Because the most dangerous person in any room is the one who knows much, feels deeply, owns greatly, and speaks little. That kind of wisdom is rare. That kind of presence is powerful. That kind of life changes the world without ever needing to announce it first.